Dear respected teacher, dear beloved community, today is the 23rd of May in the year 2024. We are in the upper Hamlet of Plum village in France. And we are on the last day, almost the last day, is tomorrow the last day of our Happy Farm retreat. And it's such a joy to be here. Tai often used to remark that the view from here is very beautiful, and it is. We are a very beautiful Sangha. A Sangha is a beautiful and precious thing. Something not to be underestimated. And what a treasure it is, what a joy it is to have a community of practice to support us and that we can contribute to. So, very happy, to enjoy the view and to enjoy being here with you today. I want to start by telling a story. His stories are nice. And this is a story you might know already, but I'm going to tell it anyway. It's by Tolstoy, Leo Tolstoy. And it's called 3 Questions. So the story goes like this. There was a certain king in a certain land. And one day it occurred to him that if he could determine what is the best moment to begin an action, what is the best moment to take action, what or who are the most important people to pay attention to, and who should he not pay attention to? That's the second question. And the third question, what is the most important thing to do? Okay, 3 questions. And he couldn't figure it out, so he let it be known in his kingdom that he would offer a great reward to anybody who could answer these 3 questions for him. So the word went out into the kingdom, and many wise folk came to the castle and presented their answers. So to answer the first question, what is the right moment, or how do we know what is the right moment to act? He had many different answers. So some said, well, you have to consult the stars, astrology, you have to determine, what is the auspicious moment, the favorable conditions to act. And others said, no, the most important thing is to plan. You have to make a detailed calendar of all your days, all your hours, all your minutes. Make a plan and stick to it. That's the only. And yet others said, well, it's very difficult for one person to determine what the best moment to act is. So actually what you need to do is recruit a council of wise people, and we will guide you, because you can't do it alone. And then there are yet others who said, actually, it's too difficult even for a council of wise people. You can't predict what's going to happen. So actually, what you need to do is recruit us, the magicians, because we can use our magic to predict the future, and then we'll tell you what is the right moment to act. And then for the second question, who is the most important person to pay attention to? There were many different answers. This is kind of noisy, huh? Interesting. How's that? Okay, so second question, who is the most important person to pay attention to? Different answers from, well, you have to pay attention to the scientists. These are the people who really know. And then others said, no, you should pay attention to the court, the nobles. Other people said, no, you pay attention to the doctors. Hello? Some thought you should pay attention to the artists, and so on, many different opinions, all contradicting each other. And then for the third question, what to do, what is the right thing to do, people had many different ideas as well. Some people thought that it's most important to focus on military matters. Some people thought it's most important to focus on taking care of the kingdom, infrastructure, education, medicine, you name it. Lots of different opinions. What is the most important thing to do? But the king wasn't satisfied. He didn't find any of these answers convincing. So he decided that he would go and consult a hermit who was reputed to be very wise and who lived in a wood, very simply, in a simple shack. But this hermit only associated with the common folk. So the king had to go in disguise. He had to wear peasant's clothes, to leave all his finery behind. He had to, dismounted from his horse at the edge of the forest. He left his bodyguards and his attendants and his courtiers and everyone. He went into the forest alone. And when he got to the hovel, the little hut where the hermit lived, he saw that the hermit was digging in his garden. He was quite frail, and it seemed like every time he put this shovel in the soil, he would kind of puff and sigh. But he said, "Oh, great wise hermit, I have come to you with these 3 questions. Please, can you offer me your wisdom? What is the right moment to act? Who should I pay most attention to? And what is the right action to take? What is the most important thing to do?" The hermit looked at him, didn't say anything. He spat in his hand and continued to dig. And the king was a little disappointed, but he thought, okay, this hermit looks a little old and tired. Maybe I can help him to dig his hole. So he said, "Dear, wise one, you look exhausted. Please, let me help you." And the hermit said, "Oh, sure, okay. Here, take the shovel." So the king started to dig. And he, for an hour or so, and the hermit was very happy. He said, "Thank you, dear king. Maybe you're tired now. I can take over. I can continue digging." But the king wanted to maybe impress the hermit a little bit, so he said, No, I'm not tired. I can keep digging." So he dug for another hour, another 2, another 3 hours, and the sun started to go down. And finally, the king was getting pretty tired, and he said, "Okay, I've dug for you all afternoon. Please, would you just tell me, what's the answer? What's your answer to my 3 questions?" But the hermit pointed behind the king. He said, "Look, there's someone coming, running. What's going on?" So the king turned around and saw a man running through the forest. Was bleeding from a serious wound in his side. And so the king immediately went to the man, and he tore a piece of cloth and tried to make a bandage, and it's quickly soaked with blood. So he took the bandage and washed it and applied it again, and over until eventually, after a long time, the wound stopped bleeding. And the bearded man, I didn't tell you he had a beard, but the one who had a wound, he had a beard. It doesn't really matter, but, just for identification's sake. He fell asleep, exhausted. And then the king also fell asleep. It was a mild summer evening, so he just fell asleep on the floor of the hut, very simply. And the next morning, when he woke up, he saw this bearded man sitting up, staring at him with shining eyes. And the bearded man said, "Oh, dear king, please forgive me." And the king said, "But I don't know you. I don't need to forgive you. I don't know who you are." And the man said, "No, you do. You need to forgive me because I had plotted to murder you. I was going to ambush you. I had heard that you were coming to the forest alone. And so I thought this was my opportunity to get revenge on you because you imprisoned my brother and you took away our property. And I was so angry, I wanted to be revenged upon you. So I hid myself in the forest on the path that you would take to go back, and I waited there 1 hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, 4 hours. And after a while, I couldn't understand why you didn't come back. So I decided to leave my hiding place, and I came to find you here. But on the way, one of your guards spotted me and attacked me and wounded me. I was able to escape only just, and I continued on my way here. And that's when you found me, and you bandaged my wound, and you saved my life. If you hadn't done that, I would have died. So please accept my loyalty. I will be your faithful servant for the rest of my life, and my son will be your faithful servant, and my whole family will be dedicated to your service. But the king said, no. He was so relieved at having been able to make peace with his enemy so quickly and without any effort, really. He said, no, I pardon you, and I will send you my personal physician to make sure that you get well, and I will restore your property and your lands to you. So the man was delighted, and he went away. And then the king just thought, well, okay, before I go back to my castle, I'm going to try one more time, try to get something out of this hermit. So he went around the hut and he found the hermit again in his garden. And this time he's planting seeds in the holes that they had dug in the rows that they had dug the day before. And he said, "Dear wise hermit, please, I beg you, will you answer my 3 questions? I've come all this way. I must have an answer." And the hermit said, "Don't you understand? You already have your answer. It's so easy." And the king was like, "What's he talking about? It's not obvious at all. I don't understand. What do you mean?" And the hermit said, "Well, when you found me yesterday, you saw that I was tired, and so you helped me to dig. And so the most important moment for you to act at that time was right then, and the most important thing for you to do was to help me dig. And if you hadn't done that, you would have left my hut earlier, and you would have been attacked and maybe killed, and you would have regretted your decision. And the most important person to pay attention to in that moment was me, because you saw that I was tired and you offered your help. And then when the man came through the bushes with his wound, you saw that you had to act immediately to staunch the bleeding and to help him, to save his life. And you paid attention to him because he was there in front of you. And you did what needed to be done. You saved his life. And so the answer to your 3 questions the answers are obvious. The most important time to act, you guys all know this already, is now, because that's the only moment then when we have power to change the situation. And the most important person to pay attention to is the person who's right in front of us, because they're the only one that we can help in that moment. And the most important thing to do, the most important action, is to offer them kindness and love, because that is what we are on this planet to do. That is our only task. So the most important moment to act is now. The most important person to pay attention to is whoever is right in front of us. And the action, the most important action, is to love, to care for and protect whoever is right there. So, a little story. The Sister Luknim asked me to talk about connecting with Mother Earth today. So you might wonder, what does this story have to do with connecting with Mother Earth? Well, I believe that we don't have to connect with Mother Earth, because we are already connected. There has never been a moment when we were not connected to Mother Earth. But at the level of our ideas, there are ideas and ways of thinking that can make us feel or think that we're not connected. So what I want to do in this time that we have together today is not to give you more ideas, because we have enough ideas already. What I'd like to see if we can do is to remove some ideas. Maybe to remove some of these ideas that cause us to feel separate, when in fact we are not separate, we are connected. Okay. So we had 3 questions. When to begin? And this is a question about time. And who to focus on. So this is a question about a person. And a question of what to do, what is to be done. and what is not to be done. This is a question of action. So I want to examine these three things: time, person, and action, a little bit. But before we do that, I want to talk a little bit about listening. Because as I said, the idea is not to accumulate more ideas as we sit here together. And so to do that, we need to listen in a special way. We like to talk about the Dharma rain, which is what we try to offer and receive in these talks. And it's, sometimes the rain is nice, sometimes there's too much rain, but I don't think there can ever be too much Dharma rain. The Dharma rain is always beneficial, it's always pleasant. But we have to know how to let it in. And it can be a little bit challenging because there's a question of trust. To really let the Dharma rain in, you have to give something up, which is your mind of discrimination. And that can be hard, because we're very used to kind of filtering what we hear according to whether we think it's right or we think it's wrong. We think it's beneficial or unbeneficial, trustworthy or untrustworthy. And we feel maybe it's safer to do that, to sort of check first, do I agree or disagree, before I kind of let it in. Well, the bad news is it's already too late. It's already gone in. You can't really stop it from going in unless you leave. You're welcome to leave if you like. But I used to say that and when we do that, it's like you receive something, and then you compare it with what you have inside, and if you agree, you say, yes, I know that already. And sometimes you hear something, and you compare it with what you know inside, and you say, no, I don't agree. I reject that. And in both cases, you learn nothing. So it's not very useful. So the invitation is to put down that kind of mind, that mind of discrimination, and just to let it in. To see how it feels just to be with the sound of my voice and with the teaching, the Dharma that is shared, and just to see if you can let it resonate in your cells and not struggle too much with the mind to figure out whether you agree or disagree. Allow it into your heart. And this, I believe, is a very important spiritual practice, the practice of deep listening. And we're going to talk more about deep listening as we go on. So I think there's a kind of moral obligation to ask these questions or these kinds of questions. And we do it with the awareness of the global situation. So we ask, what is the right thing to do? When to act? Who to give our attention to? Knowing the great suffering and injustice that is in the world. And it's very important to remember that this is not disconnected from that. This is in the context of that knowledge, that awareness and that pain, which is in us and that I believe we all feel at one level or another. So it's a kind of moral imperative to ask ourselves, what is the appropriate response to that suffering? What is the right thing to do, knowing what we know? And I include in that suffering the human suffering, which is very great, the injustice, the killing, the displacement, the starvation, poverty. But I also include in that suffering the more than human world, the earth herself and all living species, which we know are in peril. And many species are being lost, and even the species that are not extinct are diminishing in numbers greatly. We are taking more and more land, more and more space. We're pushing out our wild cousins. And we need to be aware of that. So, let's see if we can remove some of the ideas that might be making us feel separate. So we're very lucky because we have wonderful ancestral teachers, and including our teacher Tai, who has transmitted to us the wisdom of the previous generations of teachers. And he's offered it to us in a way that it's very easy to understand. It's very simple. So I want to talk a little bit about the Diamond Sutra. And in the Diamond Sutra, we are offered, it's recommended that there are 4 notions that we can remove. I'll put them over here. So the 4 notions that are mentioned in the Diamond Sutra are self, human being, living being, and lifespan. I remember when I first encountered this teaching, I thought, what on earth is this? I mean, these are very kind of self-evident notions. Right? How can you just say that we need to remove them? It didn't make much sense to me. But let's investigate a little more. With bearing in mind this question of how do we connect or reconnect, or how do we experience our connection with the earth. So let's look at this person here. I'm going to make a bad drawing. You have to forgive me. Okay, maybe it's a monastic person. Gender neutral, okay? We don't know. Here's a person. And look what else there is. In case you didn't know, that's a planet. Maybe you can't see over there. It's difficult. Well, there's a person and a planet. No planet, no person. So you can't talk about a person without talking about a planet. Okay? Yes. And we are invited to remove this notion of self, separate self. And there are many ways that we can do that. But I want to focus on this realm of action. Because we can understand our person, that's us, to be comprised of our actions. One of Thay's favorite quotes, l'homme est la somme de ses actes, ou la femme est la somme de ses actes. It's Sartre. Man is the sum of his actions. We are the result of our actions, of all of our actions. And in Buddhism we speak of three types of action. So we like to be a little bit analytical. So these are actions of thinking. We consider thinking to be action already. Actions of speech and actions of the body, so physical actions. I'm just going to call them actions again. That's what we are. We're made of these three strands, and it's, don't take my word for it. You can consider yourself, ask yourself, is this true? Does this apply? Can you relate to that? Can you see how you are the product of your actions? And I find it a helpful way to frame this question of what to do and when to do it, because the point is that it's all action. Whatever you're doing, even if you don't think you're doing anything, you're still acting. So to act or not to act isn't really the question. The question is, what kind of action do we want to give rise to? And thinking about ourselves in terms of action can help us to remove the notion of self, because we see that our actions go beyond us, go beyond what we think of as ourselves. Our actions continue us. And it's easy to see that our actions radiate out from us. Thay gave the image that I really liked of fireworks. He said in every moment a human being is like a series of fireworks exploding. Every microsecond. Action of thought, of feeling, of speech or silence, of presence. It all radiates out. It changes the space that we're in. It changes how people feel around us, how we're thinking, whether we are thinking in a judgmental way, in a way that is colored by anger or blame, or in a way that is colored by love and compassion, respect. So our thinking is already action, and it may happen that we have given rise to a thought that's not worthy of us, that's not our best. It may happen that we've said something that we regret, or that we've done something that we regret. It's normal. But Thay would say it's not too late, because we can produce at any moment a thought of compassion, a thought of love. And when do you do that? Now. And he said that thought of love can catch up the other types of thinking or speech and can sort of compensate and can restore a kind of balance. So even if we haven't thought or said or done anything that we regret, we can still produce a thought of love, even better. So we can always do that. And we can always do that now. And so we see that our self is already permeating the whole cosmos, in a sense. Think of your life, all your actions, so many actions of thinking, of speaking, of the body. They've been rippling out in all directions since the non-beginning. So we are like fireworks. I get to draw another bad picture. I don't know how to draw fireworks, but let's try. Good sound effects too. That's a firework, if you didn't know. We're kind of like a series of fireworks. Numberless. More sound effects. So we need to take some care about the quality of our fireworks, because it affects the kind of we create our own environment by our actions. So this is just one way to start to dissolve a little bit our boundaries. Yesterday I recorded a podcast with Sister True Dedication, and she said something which I really liked, which was she was talking about this same notion about allowing ourselves to discover our porosity, that we are porous. And that means that we don't have a hard boundary edge. There's a kind of exchange. Because of course we are continued by our actions, but we also continue the actions of those around us. We are also touched, influenced by the thoughts, by the feelings, by the speech, by the actions of those around us. And so in that sense, the environment is also us. This is one part of ourselves, and then this is the other part of ourselves. So it's a practice to start to look at ourselves like that, to dissolve a little bit this boundary that we feel. So the next notion that we're invited to remove is the notion of a human being. This one might seem a little bit more tricky, because isn't it obvious that we are human beings? Now, how can you just not be a human being anymore? I think the point is not to not be a human being, but it's to be more than human. To allow ourselves to be more than human. Now, there's, again, many, many different ways to see this, but I want to focus on listening. So, okay, a question. Is our thinking our own? Is our thinking in here? Is it inside? If you look at your thinking now, I think what you'll find is that it's a reflection of what you are seeing, hearing, feeling, and so on. So I'm not sure your thinking is really, or that our thinking is really ours. I think it's natural when we think about our connection with the earth to sort of, well, I speak for myself, I've sometimes felt a kind of a pain or a lack or a sense of, this sense of separation. And I wish the earth would speak to me. I wish the earth would just tell me what it wants me to do. Show me. I sometimes lay on the grass and just say, I offer my life, my service. How can I help? What can I do? Show me. And we might have the feeling that the earth is silent, that she doesn't speak. But I think she does. I think she speaks to us all the time. And one of the ways she speaks to us is in the sound of the wind, songs of the birds. Because aren't the birds the voice of Mother Earth? The birds they are also the earth. They are an expression of the earth. And when they sing, they are also the voice of the earth. So this is again a practice. Have we really listened? I get to do lots of bad drawings today. This, in case you were wondering, is a tree. And in the tree, there's a bird. Not a hunchback bird. Well, we did our best. Okay. And the bird is singing. There we go. So have we really listened? Tomorrow morning you have an opportunity to listen to the dawn chorus one more time before you leave Plum Village. I think tomorrow morning there won't be any sitting meditation, is that right? It's lazy morning. So for your information, the dawn chorus currently starts at about 5:23. Yeah, it's pretty specific. And it goes on at its full peak for about half an hour or 40 minutes, and then it starts to die down. So it's a good amount of time. It's a good meditation. But how do we hear it? How do we really listen in order to hear? Well, I like to listen and to remove the notion of my human-onlyness, that I'm just me. So what do I mean? This is we could approach it in a couple of different ways. So the most important thing in order to be able to listen is to be silent. Right? You can't hear if you're making a lot of noise. So you have to take your headphones out. And I think a lot of the time these days we have our headphones in. When we go for a walk in the forest, it seems like it's a better use of our time if we listen to a podcast at the same time, or an audio book or something. And now we're learning something as well as going for a walk. But I would suggest that we take our headphones out. But it's not enough just to be silent. We have to find a way to be silent inside. So, can we let the sound of the dawn chorus in without any filter? Can we trust it to sing our thoughts? Can we allow our thoughts to be outside of us? So the sound is our thoughts. There's nothing else. Let the birds sing your mind. Your mind is not really here. It's not really inside, it's not really outside, it's a non-local phenomenon. It's an experience that I had when I first came to Plum Village. I don't know how many years ago, 25 years ago. It was in this hall. We had the practice of total relaxation and touching the earth. And this is the first time I'd experienced that practice, and it was very profound for me, and I felt a kind of strange silence in me afterwards. I didn't know really what was happening, but I didn't want to talk to anyone. I didn't want to disturb whatever had happened. So I just went to my tent, which was over there, under the eaves of the forest, and I lay down. And a bird started to sing. It was a nightingale. Just 2 or 3 meters from my tent. It was so loud. And the sound just washed away all my words. There were no words in me. There was no comparing. There was no thinking about the sound. It was just a flood, a torrent of liquid pearls of sound, one after the other. There was no boundary, there was no me, there was no bird, there was just this flood of glorious sound. So that's an experience that I had as a beginner, as a total beginner in the practice. I didn't know what I was doing, I didn't know how I got there. It was kind of by grace and luck. And then afterwards I had to figure out what happened for my mind to stop, thinking about, narrating, saying, oh, that's a bird, that's a nightingale, I like it, it's pretty loud, I wonder what's for dinner, the usual stuff. None of that was there. There was just sound. So what happened? Well, we had this practice of total relaxation. So relaxation is important. That if you want to be able to hear, you have to be relaxed. So it might be worth trying tomorrow morning if you want to wake up early. You can just probably stay lying in your bed, in your tent or in your room. Lie on your back. And do a little body scan. Become aware of your face, your hands, your arms, your shoulders, your back, your trunk, your hips, legs and feet. And just allow everything to relax, to settle. Give yourself back to the earth. And when you've done that once, twice, 3 times, you might start to feel your breath more intimately. Coming in and out. And maybe you can trust your breath to guide you. And the thinking will intervene, it will pop up, it will poke its head up, say, hey, but what about my train? I don't want to miss my train. I need to, my luggage. And you say, it's okay, it's 5:30, plenty of time. Just rest. Because to experience a moment of real silence of the mind, of the constant chattering mind, is such a profound kind of rest. It's so healing. It's so refreshing. To entrust ourselves to silence, to stillness. And the birds will sing your mind to you. The birds will constitute your thinking, feeling, present moment. You don't disappear when you don't think, when you stop talking. You don't cease to exist. It can be a little bit terrifying if we're very identified with that inner monologue, with that voice. But it's okay to give it up, to let it stop, and to rest in the wonder. And if you notice yourself thinking and talking, this is where the map that was given to us by our ancestral teachers is so helpful. You can say, I am caught in the notion of human being. I think that I'm a human. Only a human. And I can just let that go. I can allow myself to be human and bird. It's wonderful to be more than human. It's so healing. It's so freeing. So if you notice yourself thinking, try this. This is a practice. The point about this is it's not a philosophical argument, right? It's not an intellectual argument to convince you of something. It is an experience that we need to have, that we need to test, that we need to experiment with. So can noticing the ways in which we trap ourselves in the notion of our human onlyness, can noticing that help us to release it? That's the question. Right? So mindfulness of the ways in which I constitute myself as a human being only, my recognition of that is what opens the door to me letting it go. To dwell in my more than humanness. And this is an experience, it's so healing, so refreshing. So the next notion that we're invited to remove is the notion of living being. It's another tricky one because I'm alive. I'm a living being. Don't tell me I'm not. But that's not really the point. The point is to challenge our notion of inanimate matter. We might have a tendency to think of the earth as something which is just a big pile of stuff, just a big lump of atoms, right? Rock, minerals, metals, water, gases, all of these things we may have a tendency to think of as being not alive. So we put living beings in a special category, and it's very interesting to note that science is very unclear on how a dead universe gave rise to any kind of living stuff at all. We don't even have a good definition of what it means for something to be alive. It's a very tricky thing. So the question of what is life is unresolved in the scientific sense. And so when we remove this notion of living being, it's an opportunity to reconsider what we might think of as well-established categories. This is alive, this is not alive. And we can just sort of say, well, maybe not. Because we are the children of the earth. The earth gave birth to us. She is our mother. And so, if we are alive, then our life is her life. If we have this consciousness that we're so proud of, our consciousness is her consciousness. Our thoughts are her thoughts. Our feelings are her feelings. They didn't come from nowhere. So it's an opportunity to get in touch with reverence, to treat the earth, the planet, with a little more respect and consideration. And remember that we are already connected. So this is also an exercise of listening. But now we're going to listen with our feet, with our body. So the earth also speaks to us in our connection with her. She's very eloquent. If we bring our attention from here down to the sole of our feet if we're standing, or to our legs and our buttocks if we're sitting, something happens. This is also very powerful in the practice of touching the earth. Remember, the experience I had of hearing the nightingale came also after relaxation and touching the earth. So there's a clue. These practices are very powerful. But I want to talk now a little bit about the practice of walking meditation, because this is really an opportunity to experience our connection with the living earth. And again, our ancestral teachers gave us this wonderful map, and they said, beware the pride of thinking that we are special, that we are living and other things are inert or inanimate. Remove that notion, suspend it, and see what happens when you walk with the awareness that you walk on the living earth. And what you'll find is that your walking only happens in partnership with the earth. So it's not exactly you that's walking. You know, if you, in the folk dances, sometimes you join hands like that and two people spin each other around. You can't do that alone. You need another person for that to work. It's the same with walking. If the planet, this one, if it was any less than itself, you wouldn't feel the sense of connection that you do. It takes a whole planet for you to feel this, and this, and this. A whole planet, just for you to take a step. We think that a step is something so banal, so trivial. We mostly ignore them. But a step takes a whole planet. We're so, rich. Look, the whole planet just showed up for me to take a step, and another step, and another step. Wow. And this walking is also the walking of the earth. So let go of the category. Let go of the sword of discrimination in your thinking that cuts between what is alive and what is not alive. Because it's that kind of thinking that also allows us to extract, to despoil, to pollute, to blast. We take from the earth as if it doesn't matter, as if there's no consequence. And we've forgotten something that our ancestors knew very well. that the earth is sacred, the earth is our mother. This is something we urgently need to remember, not as a notion, but as an experience. This is an experience which is available to us. And we're very lucky to have the practice of walking meditation. So I'm not going to convince you of this. Right? You're going to convince yourself. And it takes time. You have to do it again and again and again. It is a training and a practice to remember Mother Earth is there for me. The living earth. This beautiful Bodhisattva, Mother Earth. I take refuge in the earth. I allow myself to return to the earth, to settle into each step, to give myself back to the earth with every step. So let's review a little bit. We considered ourselves in terms of our action, which is constantly radiating out in all directions, in order to have a practical way to remove the notion of self. Okay? No self, no separate self. We want to experiment tomorrow morning with allowing the dawn chorus to sing our mind to us, to remove the notion of human being, human only. We're going to be more than human. We let the birds in, let the sound of the wind in, the sound of the rain, let it all in. And we suspend or remove the notion of living being and its corresponding notion of inert matter in order to experience our interbeing in every moment, in every step, in this very sensation of contact with the entire planet. So then the last notion that we're invited to remove is the notion of lifespan. And that has to do with time. So Tolstoy's three questions: when to begin, who to focus on, what to do. They're good questions, but we can do better, right? When we challenge the notion of action by removing the notion of separate self, we see that our action is not ours alone. Our action is the product of many causes and conditions coming together, many flows of inheritance coming through us. And we challenge also the notion of person, who to focus on, right? Because in the story it's very nice, they say you take care of whoever's in front of you, but sometimes there's nobody in front of you. Sometimes you're alone. And what do? Well, yes, you can take care of yourself. That's good. But I think we can do better, because we can remove the notion of our personhood, of our separateness, by challenging the notion of self, of human being, of living being. And then in every moment, we are also caring for Mother Earth. Because these feelings that we feel, the pain that we feel, knowing what we know, right? And always the backdrop, the context, the awareness of suffering, our own and the suffering of all people on the planet and all the non-human people on the planet, and the earth herself, perhaps. How do we care for it? How do we respond? What is the appropriate response? Knowing what we know, what should we do? And there, I think Tolstoy is right. The response is to love. We're not to love only people, because we know that ultimately there are no people. There are not human beings as a separate thing. If you love a person, you also love the earth. So yes, in every moment, we aspire to give rise to the energy of love, of compassion. Because the front line of the crisis, of the many crises that we face, is in our own hearts, is in this very moment. If we can meet our pain, our sadness, our rage at the injustice in the world, if we can meet that feeling with love, then that is an action which makes a difference, which resonates. I believe that. Sometimes we have faith in that, and sometimes it's hard to have faith, or we feel that it's not enough. But I'm not sure that it's not enough, because I don't know that we've really done it yet. I know for myself that I still have many difficult, painful feelings that I struggle to embrace with enough patience, tolerance, love. I still react. We all react. You can look at like a worm or a caterpillar. If you go near it, it curls up. That is a biological reaction. It's in all of us. We all do that when we feel threatened. We feel our loved ones are threatened. We curl up. We go back into our notions of separateness, of our humanness, of our limited lifespan. We retract and we react. I think we need to give peace a chance. We need to give it a chance in our own hearts. And that's not spiritual bypassing. That's not to say, oh, I'm just going to cultivate my own little island of peace and good luck to everyone else. No, because it's in the knowledge of the situation, the true situation. Because without connecting to the suffering in the present moment, then whatever peace we touch is fake. I don't want my peace, my joy, or my happiness to be connected from the suffering of the present moment, because it would be fake. I want to be able to touch joy, touch wonder, touch peace with my awareness of the suffering. Because then I regain my agency, my power to respond in the way that I would like to, that corresponds to my highest aspiration. We all love the notion of interbeing, right? We like interbeing, especially with the nice things. I interact with the butterflies and the rainbows, with the spring leaves, with the bird song. Very nice, interbeing. But that's not enough. Our interbeing has to embrace the pain, the suffering, the injustice, the killing. Because that is also part of us. And although It can feel heavy, challenging. Sometimes we just want to hide, we want to curl up, turn on Netflix, read a book, do something, do anything, not to feel that, because it is unbearable. It's so painful to know what we know. And to feel powerless sometimes, to do anything, to stop what's happening. It's so painful. But that's where we need our courage. To say, no, I am committed to feel all of it. I don't want to turn away from the suffering. And I know what to do. I have a practice that allows me to feel it, to handle it without getting overwhelmed. And sometimes you get a little overwhelmed. But it's a practice, it's work in progress. And we need to not give up. Because when we allow our interbeing to embrace the pain, that means that we are connected to it, which means that we can affect it. If we're not connected to it, there's nothing we can do. But if we allow ourselves to experience our interconnection with the pain and the injustice, to experience our co-responsibility, then we regain our power at the same time to act. And when do we act? Now. And what is the action? To love. To hold that pain, that rage, that feeling of powerlessness with all of our tenderness, with all of our love. To metabolize it, to transform it right here, right now. I take refuge in the Dharma. I take refuge in the awakened way of living. Because it is my conviction that this is the appropriate response. It's hard. Because sometimes we don't see the result right away. And we may give up. We may feel, it doesn't really work. I need to do something more active. And be careful. None of this is opposed to direct engaged action, right? This is not in opposition to that. It is a way of doing that. So it's not either or. But it's my conviction that the best thing that I can do is to try my best to live in an awakened way in every single moment that I remember to do so. And I know that every step taken with the awareness of that pain and meeting it with love is a real contribution. Because I have seen my teacher's contribution to peace on this planet. Imagine how hard it was for our teacher, Tai, to know that he could not stop the killing in his country. He wasn't able to stop the war. Maybe his contribution over years, from the 1960s to 1975, maybe helped to bring an earlier end to the war. We don't know. But imagine the agony of knowing that he's doing everything he can and he can't stop it. But he doesn't give up. He knows that the awakened way of living is the right response. to build communities of resistance is the right response. To meet every painful feeling with love and compassion is the right response. And that maybe he can't stop the war now, but maybe this will prevent a war in decades to come. And he was just one man, and he changed our collective consciousness. Mindfulness has swept the world. It's everywhere. Of course, he wasn't solely responsible for that, but to a very great extent. But it's not done. We need to keep going. We can't give up. This is not the moment to lose faith in this path. And maybe we also can't stop the killing that's going on right now. And that is an agony that we have to bear. But it doesn't mean that we are not acting. We are always acting. And it is my conviction that the right action is the awakened way of living. And the more suffering I see in the world, the more I commit myself to this path. Because it's hard. I forget. We all forget. All the time we think we're doing it, but we're only kind of going through the motions. I want to really do it. I want to do it with every cell of my being. Because I am convinced that it is the right response. But it is for each of us to ask ourselves these questions, to find out what is our appropriate response. And it may not be the same. We need all the appropriate responses. There will be a multitude of responses. But the peace that we generate here and now is not separate from the pain and the suffering, the violence that is ongoing, and the exploitation, the destruction of the earth that is ongoing, that we might feel that we are powerless to stop. But we are part of a revolution, a collective awakening. This is the collective awakening. It's happening. It's on. We are it, and it is us. Sometimes part-time collective awakening. Sometimes we forget a little bit, get a little bit distracted, wander around. But we come back, recommit. It's okay. And we keep planting seeds of peace in every moment. This is where it's helpful to consider this notion of time. Because we know that, of course, the right moment to act is now. But this now is maybe deeper than at first it seems. So usually we think of time as a line going from the past to the future. But this present moment, what is it made of? This is an easy one. Anyone? What is the present made of? Oh, come on. You got this. The past. All of the past has given rise to this. And the future, what is it made of? The present. The future is being given birth to in this moment. So what we do now affects the whole of the future. And our awareness now, our ability to respond with love, is the result of all of our ancestors and generations of wisdom before us, that have gradually cultivated this resistance to our intolerance, to our hatred, to our rage, to our reactivity. And thank goodness. But we need to continue. So the present is not only the present. And time maybe isn't just a straight line, but maybe the future is coming towards us, coming into the present, and then it passes the present and goes into the past, right? But that's not enough. Maybe actually the future comes into the present, goes into the past. In the present we act, we respond, we react, better or worse, and we plant seeds of action, right, that seem to go into the past. The action is now in the past, but those seeds continue to ripen. And at some point, those seeds ripen and germinate and become the future, and then the present again, when they're ready to sprout. So the seeds of love, of kindness, of tolerance that we plant now may need some more time to ripen in our own hearts, in the hearts of the collective. It may not happen in our lifetimes. But we remove the notion of lifespan, and we see that our actions are without limit. They don't end, they continue. They continue to ripen. And seeds of wisdom may be very patient. They may wait a long time. There's a beautiful story. I saw this on a documentary, a BBC documentary about plants, I think it was, and they were excavating a human settlement in Japan, and they knew that this was a settlement that had been occupied about 4,000 years ago. And they were digging, and they found in the earth a magnolia seed. And so they knew the seed had been there for 4,000 years. And so the assumption is the seed is dead. There's no way that it can continue to live for 4,000 years. But somebody thought, well, who knows, let's try. Let's see if we can get it to germinate. And they did whatever they did with it. I remember in primary school, we got beans to germinate. You put them in a wet cloth, and it's very fun. So however they did it, this seed sprouted after 4,000 years of waiting patiently in the dark. So what seeds of wisdom have been planted in us by our ancestors? They're waiting patiently for the right conditions of our practice, for us to offer enough mindfulness, stability, inner silence, waiting to bloom. And the seeds that we plant now with our practice, we don't know when they will ripen, when they will sprout. But we trust that they will. So it doesn't matter when. What matters is that we plant the right seeds with enough care and love. And the seed that I want to plant is a seed of tolerance, of love, of compassion, of inclusivity, of forgiveness, of understanding. And I don't know when it will ripen, but I trust that it will. So we are made of time. We are the continuation of so many streams of inheritance. Genetic, spiritual, cultural, of our land. And these streams never really began, and they never really end. They flow on through us. We are made of time. Time without limit. So again, we dissolve our personhood by removing the notion of lifespan. And this is a practice. And there are lots of ways to access it, but I really recommend cultivating the practice of touching the earth, of remembering the presence of your ancestors in you. Blood ancestors, spiritual ancestors, land ancestors, more than human ancestors. Activate that insight. It's an insight that you have already, but we need to turn it on again and again. Keep it alive, keep it awake. Sometimes you may face a moment where you feel it's too hard. I can't do it. It's too much for me. That's the moment where you can ask your ancestors for help. And there's a very concrete practice, a way to do this that I spoke about one time. And look, it's one of the funny things that Tai says all these things, but the question is, do we do them or not? So I had the kind of misfortune to say, well, he said to do this thing, so I'll do it. Devastating. Oh my goodness. This is a tough one, but I really recommend it. If you want to do it, try. Take 2 chairs, and you might like to go to somewhere quiet in the forest. And you sit down on one of the chairs, and in the other chair you visualize one of your ancestors, maybe your mother, your father. For me, it was my mother, because she had passed away, and I felt a lot of grief, confusion, anger, guilt, regret, all the nice things. And so I felt like I wanted to talk to her, but I didn't know how. So Tai said, take 2 chairs, go into the forest, sit down on one, visualize your mother in the other one. So I was like, okay, well, he said to do it, so... It is devastating. I don't know why, but this is such a powerful practice. It's something. So what you do is you sit down on your chair and you visualize your ancestor in the other chair. Or it could even be a friend or a teacher or somebody you have a difficulty with, something is stuck. And you say everything in your heart that you need to say. And then you get up. You go to the other chair. And you sit down as the other person, not as yourself. So I sat down as I am now my mother, and I visualized myself in the other chair. And I just started speaking. I didn't expect it to work. I thought, I'm just going to sort of repeat things I already kind of roughly think my mother probably would have said to me. Oh, no. Total surprise. Things I had no idea that she thought or felt. And I cried, and I cried, and I cried. It was earth-shattering. So much so that I didn't dare do it again for about 10 years. But I did eventually. Very powerful. And so sometimes you just need to ask for help. Sometimes it's like, I don't know how to do this. Sometimes you can ask Tai. You can visualize Tai in the other chair. You say, Tai, I give up. I can't do it. You do it. So it's a little disrespectful. Please, Tai. Could you possibly help? Then you go and sit in the other chair, and woo, it works. This is practical. This is not theoretical. We need to allow ourselves to experience ourselves as a moment in this endless flow of inheritance, of multiple streams of inheritance flowing through us continually. And it's a practice, it's something we need to cultivate regularly. We need to remember. We need to do it. It's not enough just to think about it once and go, oh, that sounds good. We have to actually do it. So this present moment, which contains all of the past and all of the future, is so important. So immense. I read to you a little poem, a little piece of a poem by Walt Whitman. This is from Leaves of Grass. He said, "There was never any more inception than there is now, nor any more youth or age than there is now, and never will be more perfection than there is now, nor any more heaven or hell than there is now." Neither increasing nor decreasing. The insights of the Heart Sutra are available not only in the East, in many cultures. But it's hard to believe sometimes that this is it. Because sometimes this feels bad. This feels like it could be better. That there could be less suffering. And the point is not to give up or not to stop our engagement or our work to relieve suffering in the world. But the point is to allow ourselves, whilst operating, acting in the historical dimension, to do everything we can to reduce suffering, but to allow ourselves to touch the ultimate, to rest in God, to rest in silence, because it is that resting, that stillness, that peace that we want to offer. That is the best thing that we have to offer. It's the most powerful thing that we can offer. Have we really done it? Enough. More than enough. Let's sing a song. Should we sing a song? They asked me to sing a song. Maybe we can enjoy a sound of the bell first.